You're listening to episode 367 of the Membership Geeks podcast, and this week we're going behind the membership.
You're listening to the Membership Geeks podcast, bringing you proven practical tips and advice from the leading experts on growing a successful membership business each and every week. And now here are your hosts, Mike Morrison and Callie Willows.
Well, hello there. I'm excited about this episode. It's a little bit different to previous Behind the Memberships because my guest today has actually only just launched her membership. And if you've listened to these episodes before, you'll know that normally my guests have had their membership running for at least a year. But I was really keen to talk to Josie Lewis and really deep dive into her recent launch.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this as well, especially, when we were talking about bringing Josie onto the show, knowing that she's just launched. And, I know that within the academy community, Josie shared a little bit of an insight into that launch, and it was certainly far more successful than she anticipated. She attracted over 800 members during the launch. So while I think this is the earliest stage we brought someone on for a little behind the membership deep dive, it's with good reason.
Yeah, and as great a result as that launch is, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to speak to Josie while it was still fresh in her mind, essentially, that many members in your first launch can also be a bit of a double-edged sword, which is something we talk about here, as well as how Josie actually achieved that result in the first place and the work that went into her launch success.
Yeah, well, I think we should just stop talking and jump in, because I really want to hear what Josie's got to say and what else she's got to share about the ups and the downs and the good and the bad of such a successful launch. So should we dive in?
Let's do it. Today, I'm talking with the wonderful Josie Lewis, owner of a art production studio and now a membership owner too, with her recently launched art revenue coaching membership. Welcome to the show, Josie.
Well, hello. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to talk to you. I'm really looking forward to this. And I will say this is going to be a little bit different to our normal Behind the Membership episodes, as your membership is only really recently launched. But I thought it would be a great change to actually just really deep dive into that launch process that you've just been through and how you're finding these first couple of months of running a membership.
Yeah, outstanding. I love talking about it.
So with that said, to get us started, do you want to tell us a little bit about what your membership actually is?
Yes. So my membership is called Art Revenue Coaching. And in the membership, I help artists to make art and sell their art because I think artists should get paid.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a good cause there. And so what made you actually to decide to launch a membership, especially considering you already have a successful art business already?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, probably 2020, 2019 or so, I was I have a studio where I make art and it's delightful and having some success and things were going great. But whenever I would meet an artist, I would just life coach them within like 5 minutes. Any creative, really any business owner. I just love online marketing and I love social media and I love helping people to figure out ways to bring their superpowers to the world. And and I'm kind of a frustrated professor. I love teaching. I love communicating, all those things. And so it was like, I felt like I wasn't fully maximizing my potential or my passions by just being an artist, although that's a lovely job too, and so I just kept having this repeated pressure or like this kind of like calling or this like, Josie, you've got to create this opportunity to connect with artists and just help them and support them and coach them and give them community and all the things, because most people are just sort of floating around and there's so much cultural myth around artists not being able to make money, the starving artist, all that I think is, especially in these days, harmful and incorrect. And so I really want to correct that myth and help people.
Awesome. That sounds great. And have you always been an artist? Has that always been your background or were you previously doing other things before that?
Yeah. So my daddy's an artist and I came up making art and then I went to, art school for 4 years. And then I went to grad school, which is an MFA in the US. So basically I went to art school for like 8 years. I could have been a surgeon. No, not really. I couldn't have been a surgeon, but I definitely was in art school for a long time. So of course I know loads and loads of artists. And I also, my dad is just an incredible painter, but he never was able to master the marketing. And this is of course before the internet, but it was just hard. It was just hard to figure out how to monetize it, And so, just watching my dad, and then of course, many, many artist friends of mine that are just geniuses and their work is so amazing and they just struggle, so I just really have that heart.
So the membership is very much focused on the how to make a living from being an artist, as opposed to teaching kind of art techniques and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's not a tutorial membership at all. I do think it's important to talk about the artistic process and like developing your unique voice and figuring out how to discover your superpowers as an artist and how to get better at communicating your art, all those things. But it's absolutely not like, and here's how you paint with watercolors, And
so I'd love to know, you mentioned when I asked about what made you decide to launch a membership that you first started thinking about this a few years ago. So now I know you only launched recently. So what was it that actually kind of took you from that idea a few years ago to now launching?
Yeah. So I had this idea of doing a membership or a course. So it was between, launching a full-scale digital course on the same topic or a membership. And I actually recorded a course last year, but I got kind of slowed down with the edit and a number of other things. And not to mention the fact that I have a full-time production studio. So I have a full-time job already. So it's kind of like adding in these additional elements is always like a time management thing. And I also have a very big audience on social media. So I probably have, 3+ million followers on various social channels for my art. And so then it was like, okay, I know that there's probably a Venn diagram of people who are interested in my art and also are interested in their own creative practice. And there's somewhere in the middle that, there's like a group of people that I could target, but it was a pivot, so it took me a while to figure out how to do the pivot, while not alienating, I can say that word, alienating my existing audience, but uncovering a new audience. And so, and then also fear, as a side note, totally terrified, like completely terrified. Cause I just didn't know, I didn't know, we were talking about like what a failure would be. And somebody was like, well, what if nobody signs up for your membership? And I'm like, well, that wouldn't be that bad. It would be if 10 people signed up, because then I'm on the hook for like a year of content, but without really the compensation to make it worth it. So that was the concern, and it was just like, I don't really struggle with imposter syndrome in my art identity, but in this category, it's kind of like being a business coach doesn't seem like something, even though I love finance and money and talking about sales and online marketing. And I just get so geeked out about it. I felt like I wasn't quite qualified. I don't know. There was a lot of fear and a lot of resistance. It took some fighting, which I'm sure your audience can identify with. There's a real fight, and then getting into some of my strategies for doing that pivot, just required me being on camera a lot, I needed to develop the old know, like, and trust, and people knew my hands, they knew my art, but they didn't know my face. They didn't know my communication style, so I needed to figure out a way to see if I could use the audience that I have, but pivot to this new, I call it the Josie show. So it goes from Josie Lewis art to the Josie show. So then the Josie show is more me talking about the creative practice and creative business. And it just took a really long time. It took a really long time to figure it out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And A couple of things I want to touch on there. The first is, you mentioned you already have this hugely successful production business, which is kind of a full-time job on its own. So you don't really need to be starting a membership in terms of for finances and things like this. So this is really more of a passion project, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Although I will say that I would recommend to here's my business hat coming on. I would recommend to anybody in any business to diversify. Any small business entrepreneur owner should diversify as many ways as they can, because as we know, the last couple of years, things change a lot fast and we don't know what's coming, and so then I've thought a lot about having more digital products, and also it's scalable. And that's the other brilliant thing about the digital world. And there's only so many paintings I can make and so many paintings I can ship, and I can raise my prices, I guess, but really it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but with digital, naturally, I can keep growing and keep building and add more products and add different types of, maybe more specialized memberships. There's a lot of directions I can go. And that scalability is really key.
Yeah. It gives you an extra safety net, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the other thing you mentioned there was about your audience. So you had a huge audience already, but they were people that were interested in your art. So you mentioned there kind of that having to make that pivot between the people that would also be interested in learning from you in terms of how to do this themselves, essentially. So how did you end up kind of navigating that and working out that split?
Yeah. So I am a real big fan of the email list building, and I had been building an email list for years and years and years towards my art, towards like product launches and, art tutorials. And I have a watercolor set that I sell and things like that. So I'd started to build up that list. And so then, because of the wonders of, tagging, I'm able to like tag how people come in. So right away, this happened back in 2020. I actually started building my art biz list, I call it, early on, because I wanted to start pulling people in that might be interested in that kind of coaching from me. And so I started that list very early. And I even had like I had some lead generator stuff, like it was like I had a mini course and a few things like that. And then it kind of died on the vine a little bit. But I kept it going and people kept signing up for it. They'd somehow dig it out of my website and they'd find it. And then when I got real serious about it was last fall. And Instagram is my sweet spot. So that's like I'm on all the platforms, but Instagram is where I feel like I have the most connection to my audience, the most engagement and all that. But I didn't want to dilute the Josie Lewis art brand and alienate the people that are just there for the paint, So I decided to start a new channel called The Josie Show. And I actually had another channel that was already that I'd used for something else. And I just pivoted that. So it came fully loaded with some followers already, which is very nice if you can get it, but then I was also pulling people over from Josie Lewis art. And then my plan there was to create daily shorts, like the reels, which is a big thing these days, which is under 60 seconds. So they're under 60-second vertical video where I give a art coaching tip. So it's a talking head, basically. It's me talking. And I keep it real short, so hopefully under 60, it's always under 60, but sometimes even under 30. So it's just like real, tight. And that still continues to be where I get the most action, the most lead generators and the most engagement, the most views and everything. But then I'm also posting those to all the other channels as well, and one thing that I think tactically I kind of blew in the early years of the business was I didn't post regularly to YouTube, even though I have all these videos. It ended up being like kind of an ego thing for me, because I would post a video to Instagram and I'd get hundreds of thousands of views. And then I'd post the same video to YouTube and I'd get 40 views, So then it was like, well, what's the point of this? But of course, the point is that YouTube lives forever. And so I have YouTube videos that people are going back to that are 3 or 4 years old, and they still are clicking on the links and they're still generating leads. So then that was the other thing that I decided to do, is double down on YouTube.
Awesome. And so that was kind of the fall, did you say, where you kind of really started doubling down on that?
In the fall. Yep.
So I love that actually you didn't take the fact that you had an existing large audience for granted, and you did kind of put in that effort to build a specific audience for this, because I think that's a trap a lot of people fall into when they've got an existing business, of not recognizing that the membership maybe isn't for the people that are already interested in their other business. So I love that you kind of put the time and effort into doing that, even though it, we all know it's huge work growing one audience, let alone two.
Yes, it is. But it seemed like so important to, if people are going to be coached by me, just knowing that I'm an artist that they like isn't enough. There has to be more of a connection to my communicating style and, like my humor, and because not everybody's going to like me, unbelievable as that is. Some Absolutely. People might not like me, and that's fine. They can go get their art coaching somewhere else. But I really felt like I needed to be there to charm people, and to pull them into my orbit.
So I'd love to talk about the launch itself a little bit then. So when exactly did you launch?
So that would have been the beginning of May. I think the doors opened on like May 9th or something like that.
Awesome. So what did you actually do for the launch itself? How did you actually promote things and get those first few members signing up?
Yep. So we did the pre-launch formula, the Jeff Walker approach. And so shortly prior to about 2 weeks prior to the open cart, we, I didn't have anything in the membership really, it was because it was kind of the idea was that this is the founding member launch. So there wasn't really much content in there. So I filmed a workshop, like a mini course on Instagram for artists, and then allowed people to join for free. And then released a video every day. Once it started on, I don't know. The idea was that the last video of the Instagram for Artists was released the day that the doors opened for the membership. And so the Instagram for Artists workshop pulled in, I think I got like 5,000 signups or something for that. So it was pretty, and that was some from my existing list, because I had been working on building that list for a while, because I'd had lead generators and stuff like that. But I think I even have it notes over here somewhere. From my business list at the beginning of that whole launch sequence, went from 7,000 to 15,000. So it was a really significant uptick that I was able to do with just that launch, which I'm really proud of. Like that was incredible. And it also shows that there's demand, people are like, ooh, I need this, so that was gratifying.
Huge amount of demand there. Yeah. That's kind of almost doubling your audience there. And it's safe to say it was a pretty successful launch, right?
Well, it met my requirements. like I said, I was worried about just getting 10, but we ended up with, I think at the last count was 840 of people that joined. So that was amazing. And then I had several different tiers. People could join monthly, and then they could join yearly, and then they could join as a VIP. So, it was distributed throughout those.
Awesome. So yeah, nearly 850 members on your first launch is incredible. As you say, you had a big audience to draw that from, but it's an awesome result either way. So you mentioned you've got the monthly membership tier, obviously the annual option for that, and the VIP. So what was included in those membership options?
So when we launched the pitch, what we were offering was a monthly training and a monthly live call. And since then we've been kind of reconfiguring, and I'm adding a few things just because it makes sense. Oh, and there's a community as well. So those are sort of the three elements that were sort of the promised package.
And are you actually running on a launch model? So are you closed now, or can people still?
We're closed. Yep. We're closed. And my plan is to launch again in September or October.
I'd love to know, in terms of the run up to the launch, you were building that audience. Did you actually kind of get their feedback on what you were creating and kind of solicit ideas from them? Or did you actually let them know what you were creating? Or did this kind of come out as a surprise to people that you were launching this?
So do you mean my existing email list or the
list you've been building for the membership, essentially the business?
Yep. I did some polling early on, probably a couple months before launch. I sent out a survey asking if people are interested, what kind of training they would like. I gave them, probably like 25 titles of things and just asked them to click which ones they thought were awesome. And I got about 1,000 people that filled out that form. And that was really helpful because it dictated. Instagram for Artists was one of the top picks, so then it was like, oh, well, there's my free workshop because everybody seems to want that, so I pulled, that poll really helped. And then I love the polling feature in Instagram stories. So I did a ton of that. Like, I run a poll, it seems like every other day, just some of it's just fun and silly, but a lot of times I'm like running a poll, like, because I still write a blog that, that's once or twice weekly. And so I send out polls to find out, like, which blog do you want? Like, do you want this title or this title? And it's so amazingly effective and helpful because what my audience wants and what I think they might want is often wildly divergent. Like, it's shocking how different it can be, so it's a lot of, sometimes I kind of know, but more often than not, I'm like, oh, okay, they want this. All right. So.
Yeah, I think that it's always that thing where, you can go so far down, like, this is definitely what people want. And then it's like, oh no, they want this other thing that you maybe would have thought would be really unpopular or that nobody would be interested in. Yep. Yeah, that always seems to be the way, I think. So obviously the launch was incredibly successful. You've kind of got 6-figure membership straight out the bat, but is there anything that you would do differently next time you do launch?
Oh, I'd have a team. I'd have a team, and I got people on board midway when I was just like, oh my gosh, because I was doing so much selling. I didn't even do webinars. I was trying to get it together to do webinars, but I was just so busy welcoming new members. I was on Instagram. I was doing in the DMs, you can leave voice messages. So I was telling people, hey, ask me a question. And then I'd leave them a personal message. So I was just on that thing all the time. And then of course there's tech issues, people can't figure out how to pay, and they get double charged or whatever, all the things that happen. And I was swamped. I was completely swamped. And then people were jumping into the community in robust numbers. Like, I thought, well, some of the people will want to go there, but like they're all artists that are trying to promote themselves, and they're so excited to have someone to be there to see their art. And so then everybody was jumping in to the community, and it was just like, oh my gosh, there's 200 new people there that they tell their life stories. And they're amazing. These humans are so incredible. And I want to spend time with each one and look at their art and make a substantive response. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So that was, so I got a couple of people on the team that just to be in the community. And I think for the next launch, my husband works with me. So he's the director of operations here. And so he was lockstep with me that whole thing and helped a lot. But I think we're going to get more technical support, more, admin coverage, because it's just too much. It was way too much.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the downside of having that kind of that big launch, especially first launch, because that getting that many members straight away is awesome, but it is that kind of baptism of fire into management that's needed and keeping up with that kind of customer support and engagement as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you do have a team helping you with that now, but you didn't initially when you were first getting started.
Yeah, it didn't. I mean, I pulled those people in midway, that I just happened to have some friends that were very qualified to be in the community and would have a lot of good things to say. So I pulled those folks in, and that was very, very helpful. And now we're in the process of hiring someone to do more of the tech backend stuff for me, because, what I'm finding is like, when I upload the training, what we're trying to do is to keep me in my zone of genius, which is, I love to create the teaching. I love to film the teaching. I love to interact with people too, because it's important for me to see the questions and the comments that people have, because it really helps me to define the scope of the training, so it's a benefit, I think, of the membership, is that I can be in there seeing what people are asking, looking at their Instagram pages, looking at their websites, and really fine tuning it. So that's the benefit of, the founding members, is that they get more attention, even with 850 people, they get more attention. And so I, find though that stuff like uploading, I use Kajabi as my platform, and it's like uploading the video takes a million years, and then writing a caption is just brain fuzz, and then getting a thumbnail. I mean, all those things, and then I upload the transcript and I upload the PDF, and somebody has to build the PDF, and that's not my zone of genius. So we're looking to hire someone, I could just provide the training and the forward facing, front, and also all the marketing stuff on the social media side. Cause I continue to show up on Instagram as the Josie Show, and on YouTube, and on Facebook, and on Pinterest, and on TikTok. So, there's a lot, there's a lot of back end,
Yeah, definitely. So I would love to know then, in terms of, we've talked about them being really great launch numbers, but did you actually have a goal in mind for the launch?
I just had no idea. I just didn't know what would happen. And, people say they're like a percentage of your list, but some of my list had been around for a long time, and I didn't know how active they were. It was a big question mark for me. And my break even was 100 members. I thought if I hit 100 members at a very low, the founding member rates are really low. So it wasn't going to be a whole ton of money, but it was like, that will compensate me for doing the trainings and, just setting it up, so 100 was my, that'll make me feel okay about it. And then after that, I really just didn't know. I will have, when we launch again, I've got goals, now I have a better sense, although I have some concerns that I picked all the low hanging fruit of people that have been my big fans for a long time. And they're like, yes, I'm in. And now it might be a little bit harder, because I'll be pulling in maybe lukewarm leads instead of hot leads or cold leads, and so it's like kind of charming them and pulling them in, and prices going up. So there's going to be a different, value equation happening. So, Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the founder price actually?
It was $22 a month.
Okay.
To come in. And then, then there was like a discount to order for the year. And then there was a $7.99. This is US dollars, of course, $7.99 VIP group.
So you've been, at the time of recording this, live for around 2 months. How have those first few weeks actually gone for you? Has there been any surprises?
Yeah, there were surprises with that, the vigorous nature of the community involvement. And I wasn't wild about the Kajabi community platform. It was hard to manage, which I'm understanding from the forums and stuff that I'm in, that I'm not unusual in that assessment. So we've been digging into other options for that, but then it's way slowed down, after the initial like flood of introductions, it way slowed down, and now it's much more manageable. And that's been great. I still don't love the format. So it's an open question, but I also understand that I'm sure Kajabi knows, and they do seem to always be launching new options, or new updates. So hopefully it will get better. I'm not sure. That's still a question. And then I was surprised. Well, one thing that happened, which I'm sure is very unique to my niche, but it might happen in other niches as well. But one thing that happened was, the Josie Show channel that I have on Instagram, I hadn't followed anybody. It was there was no followers on that account. But when I opened the membership, I followed the new members. So then I got it, which is a great way for me to I can scroll through and see what people are doing, what they're posting. And it helps me to just understand, the life of my artists that are in my group. And one thing that happened that was just brilliant, I got to figure out a way to like promote this more for the next launch, is that the lovely members all started following each other. And of course there was, so some people doubled their Instagram followers, with a bunch of like excited artists that are supporting them. And that was really fun and a huge benefit that I did not anticipate, but it was super helpful for my artists that are looking to grow their Insta pages. So I gotta so now we have an Instagram directory, and, we doubled down on that. So next launch, that will be like, hey, if you want to be a part of this crazy big, squad, like this is your opportunity.
I love that. And yeah, I think it sounds like you kind of hit on something where you've got a really strong community element straight away. And I think for a lot of memberships, that's something they do struggle with to start off with, getting that engagement in the community and stuff. But it seems like you've hit on something where actually that's just been inherent from the start, which is great.
Yeah. Well, then I'd been through Membership Academy, and I'd read a lot about communities, and I was like, I don't think it's going to be that busy. Years ago, I had a Facebook community that was like super boring and like nobody ever posted. And I was like, this is dumb, So I thought it would be like that. I didn't know. I just didn't know that it was going to be something that people were really going to enjoy, so.
Now, obviously it is early days, so it's a little too early to kind of get an idea of kind of retention and things like that. But is there anything that you've put in place in particular with retention in mind to try and keep all those members for as long as possible?
Yeah. So, I'm so new that it's like, I'm just figuring it out as I go. So I didn't even really have a system for like reaching out on a weekly basis to, here are the updates, which of course I'm in a bunch of memberships and that's pretty standard. So, but somehow I hadn't factored that in, like I was just like, I've got trainings and I've got calls, and so then since the membership has been going, I've also been finding out kind of what I have bandwidth for. And I found that I actually love doing the calls. I wasn't sure if I would enjoy them or not. But they're actually really fun. It's really fun to interact with people. And so I think I'm going to start including more calls. And it's like that balance of, I don't want to overwhelm people, but I also would like to have something for them every week, so that there's some sort of like, hey, here's excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So that there's a short behind the scenes or something like that. So I'm currently developing a more systematized calendar with weekly content of some sort. And I think that will be helpful. I mean, I definitely have had people drop off. I offered a free 30-day refund, which I think in the future it will be 15 days. I like the refund option, but I think I'll just make it a little bit shorter. And I've had people drop off, and I don't know, I kind of figured that would happen. And so I don't know. What do you think? You're the expert.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you haven't already, go through the retention essentials section of the roadmap and get all of that in place for your onboarding, your cancellations, your refunds and things. Because that'll give you all the kind of key things I would recommend, I would say.
Yes.
But it sounds like you're doing a great job already in terms of just making members feel welcome and being accessible to them as well. It sounds like a lot of them have joined specifically for you and your expertise, as well as that community, which is awesome. That's awesome for you. It's a kind of a huge selling point. And one last thing I wanted to mention on the launch itself is, I'm curious if you'd actually run launches like this before. So you mentioned about you'd used Jeff Walker's formula. Was this the first time you'd done that, or have you run this kind of launch before?
No, that was really, I've launched digital courses before. And of course, I've been launching shop updates. And I find that scarcity and urgency is the thing that makes the world go round in my space. Like I have a few things that are always available as far as like physical products that you can buy, but mostly I do it in cycles. And so this was the first time that I had done a very formalized like workshop leading into an open cart. Usually it's just like a simple lead generator. And then I pull people in and then I launch, at some point in there. But I will do this again. That was very, very effective. And I'll probably do more than one next launch. I'll probably have something 2 weeks out and then maybe a week out. And then I'm in a webinar like crazy. So webinars are, my big target now.
Yeah. I remember you posting in the academy in the middle of your launch about, so this is going really well, but should I try and work out how to do a webinar? And it being kind of like, maybe save that for next time. And just
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And probably do more lives. Like I never do live stuff on social, but I think that seems like people talk about that as being effective. So, these are the things I'll try.
Yeah. Awesome. So what's your long-term goal for the membership then? Have you got one, or is it kind of just a see how it goes at the moment?
Well, actually, the Membership Academy is my model. So thank you. My husband and I are always like, we're like, well, what should we do about blah, 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 some technical thing, or should we have a plug-in here? And the Membership Academy will have an answer. So we really appreciate it. So thank you so much for creating such a vast resource. It's really, really been helpful as we're going. Brilliant. So it's been great. And I'm in a bunch of memberships and I've taken all of the courses, but this is the most comprehensive and it's a beautiful site. So if anybody on this are listening are like, should I join? Yes, you should. You should join because it's amazing. So I really like the platform in Membership Academy where there's this kind of like full course, you have a very developed, vast system of how people should go about this. And then of course there's all the side information as well. And so my idea, going forward is I'm building it. I don't know. Did you have that course before you started?
No. So this is version 3 of what we were doing. So so we always knew we'd have a roadmap, but when we first launched, we didn't have all the content for that. So we worked on building the content library up. Then we created a navigational roadmap that was through that content. And then now obviously we've got the full course-based roadmap instead. So that's been an evolution.
Yes. So that's what's going to happen for me. So what I would love, and that's kind of how I'm thinking about the content that I'm developing now, is I'm thinking of it in terms of some sort of, in the future, it'll be sort of a sequential, it's lightly sequential. It's not super rigid. It's not like, well, you have to build a platform first. It's, with art, it's a little more squishy, but definitely, in 2 years or even in a year's time, when I have, 12 trainings up, I want them to be like, so when somebody joins, I can say, I have like stages, I have a quiz that they can take to figure out what stage they're at. And then I can like sort of plug them in like, well, you probably need to look at these 5 things, and so then the goal now is to put those together so that, want it to be sequential and make sense, because I've been involved in some memberships that I come in if they've been around for a couple of years, and the content is very valuable, but it's a mismatch or a mishmatch, I guess, mishmatch. So I get in there and I just get overwhelmed because it's like, well, how am I supposed to, I guess I am interested in webinars and I am interested in this, but it just seems like it's hard to navigate. So I want to help people to go through something that's kind of like a step-by-step thing, which is exactly what you're doing in Membership Academy. So that's the goal for me.
I love that. And so as we wrap up then, what is one tip you would give to someone listening who is thinking of starting a membership?
The thing that I've been thinking about a lot with almost anything, with any good idea, with any great art, with any good teaching, with any book, with anything at all, like information, that we're bringing into the world, building the thing is 50%. So like making the art, for a shop update is 50%. Developing the idea and the platform for the membership was 50%. And then the other 50% is marketing and communication and strategy and hammering away, like go. And I think a lot of people, they put all their heart and soul into creating their product, no matter what it is. And then they kind of forget that they also have to let everybody know, and people need to hear it a lot. They need to get a lot of touches before they're like, oh yeah, I guess I will look at that landing page, So I think that's the thing that I'm always trying to help my artists with too. It's like, it's not just about making the art. You've got to promote. And that's very uncomfortable for many people, including me, like I've had to get used to that.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great tip and lesson for everyone, because it is so easy, as you say, to just get so head down into the creation side that then you're done and you're like, well, why is nobody here praising me for creating it? You have to actually then spend the time telling them as well. So I love that. And I thank you so much for your time today, Josie. I've loved watching your progress in the Academy and how this has gone for you. And I'd love to get you back in a year's time or so to see how things have carried on going as well.
Oh, it'll be so fun. Thank you so much for what you do to help us membershippers. And I appreciate it so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And obviously the membership's closed at the moment, but where's the best place for people to go to check out your work or to connect with you further?
Yeah, I'm Josie Lewis Art everywhere on social. And then on Insta, I'm also the Josie Show. And that's where I talk art and art and business. And then my website is josielewis.com. And my landing page with the waiting list is josielewis.com/arc. That's ARC. It's Josie's Arc.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes as well. So thank you again, Josie. It's been wonderful talking with you. I feel like we could have talked on for hours there because there's so many details to get into. But it's been awesome to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Wow, I really, really loved that conversation. And something I really appreciate about Josie is the effort that she went into to make sure that she was building an audience very specific to what she was going to be doing with her membership, rather than just relying on that larger audience she'd already built up for the other sides of her existing business. She actually really zeroed in on who she wanted specifically for that membership. And I do think that audience size is probably something a lot of people would have taken for granted, and they wouldn't have even thought that they need to build this separate audience.
Yeah, and I think while it essentially doubled her workload, having that kind of two audience to cater for, it was so vital to her success. And it is something a lot of people with existing businesses don't do. I mean, she has a 7-figure business, millions of followers, to then actually take that leap and pivot down that audience and branch off. That's a huge thing to do. And a lot of people won't take that step and then they don't achieve the results that they hoped for.
Yeah, absolutely. I really also had a big appreciation for just how relaxed and chilled Josie was about the launch as well, just in terms of her actual expectations. As you said, she already has this high level of success within her business. So, you would expect that maybe she'd be really ramping up and putting too much pressure on herself in terms of what she was shooting for. with the launch. So I liked her approach. I liked the more relaxed approach, because we're all about that more relaxed approach to business. And she's, in doing that, I think she's just left herself still with a lot of options for future launches, in terms of new tactics to try, new strategies to try, new directions to go in.
Yeah, there's plenty of scope to continue growing those launches further. And I think the level of engagement that Josie has had right off the bat as well is really encouraging. There is a great future ahead for this membership.
There really is. And I think, having brought Josie on so early on in her membership journey, there's a lot that I think we're going to see from what she does with that membership. And yeah, I'm excited to getting an update. Obviously, big thank you again to Josie for sharing the journey and the insight into her launch so far. And I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that I'm definitely looking forward to checking in on how things are going in a year, or I'm saying in a year. I'm booking. Yeah, I'm kind of committing Josie to an update episode.
Yeah.
All right, that is it from us for another week. Thanks again to Josie. Thanks, of course, to the co-host with the mo-host. I almost said mohawk there.
I was going to say, I need to.
Yeah, we'll work on that one. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the Membership Geeks podcast. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Membership Guys podcast, we invite you to check out membershipacademy.com. The Membership Academy is the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a membership website. Whether you're still trying to figure out what your idea is going to be, or whether your website's already up and running and you're just looking for ways to grow it and attract new members, then the Membership Academy can help you to get to the next level. With our extensive course library, step-by-step membership roadmap, exclusive member-only discount perks and tools, as well as our supportive, active community that will help you along the way with feedback, encouragement, and advice, the Membership Academy is the perfect place to be for anyone looking to start, manage, and grow a successful membership business. Check it out at membershipacademy.com.